What's up guys, my name is Ace, and today we're going to be looking at the top 20 beginner tips that I have for Apex Legends. Now for the regulars on my channel, don't worry, Call of Duty isn't going anywhere on this channel. I've just really been enjoying Apex Legends recently, and a lot of people have been asking me for some tips and advice to help get them going with this game, so that's why I decided to make this video, and I may end up making a few more in the future depending on how well this is received. Now, a big thing to keep in mind with this video is these are beginner tips. If you've been playing this game a bunch since it launched, you probably know most of these, or at least a lot of them, but even then, you might pick up a few things that you didn't know. Now, the first tip I wanted to give you guys involves dropping in on the map. When you're first dropping in, they've actually got a cool mechanic with this. You stick with your squad. So you have the jump master and he controls where you guys land, and you all stick together, but you do have the option to branch off at any time and land on your own. A big tip that I have for you is stick with your squad till you get close to the area that you guys are going to be landing in, then branch off and land at a separate building from where the rest of your team is landing. Now, the reason for this is if you guys all land together, the loot is very sparse in this game, and therefore maybe one of you will get a gun, and then the other two are left basically defenseless, and the guy with the gun has to protect them. Whereas if you branch off a little bit and everybody goes to their own building that's still close by to their teammates, you increase the odds of everybody getting a gun, and then you can regroup if you want to, or you can just go on and start attacking enemies. Next up, I wanted to go over the key loot that you want to be looking for, especially towards the beginning of the game. For the rest of the loot, you can kind of add on as you go, but the most important things you want to be looking for when you first land are going to be a gun, armor, a helmet, as well as ammo for the gun that you end up finding. These are the absolute essentials that you want to get your hands on nice and early, and if you miss out on even just one of these pieces of loot, it will often lead to your death. You'll either just get melted because you don't have armor, somebody will headshot you, which will also melt you, or if you do get a gun but you don't pick up enough ammo for it, you will often be able to get one kill, but the moment his teammate arrives to come and try and save him, you're pretty much screwed because in this game you do burn through ammo pretty quickly. This leads us to the next tip that I have for you guys, and this applies throughout the entire match. Always try and take more ammo for the gun that you're using than you think you would need. I can't count the number of situations when I first started playing this game where I thought, oh, I've got like 150 rounds. That should be plenty. I don't need to pick up this extra ammo that I found. Then after I get into a really intense battle, we wipe out a squad, but we don't quite have time to loot them and another squad starts attacking us, I realize I'm completely out of ammo and pretty much completely defenseless. In addition to this, having that extra ammo can be really helpful because sometimes your teammates don't manage their ammo very well and then they need some towards the end of the match, and it's always nice to have that little bit of extra to give to them. Ammo is one of the most important pieces of loot to keep in your inventory, in my opinion, in this game. This brings us to the next tip, and we're going to start getting into the more so gunfighting tips, and this is headshots. The headshot multipliers in this game will range anywhere from about 1.4 up to 2 times depending on the gun that you're using. So with some guns, you deal literally double the amount of damage to the head. Even when players have the lower tier helmets like level 1 or level 2 helmets, going for headshots is still worth it because your headshot damage will be more powerful than the damage reduction that helmets give, which that level 1 helmet will reduce damage taken to the head by 30%, so your multiplier is still going to overpower that. Now, as you get more towards the later game where players tend to have better loot as you go on, headshots will be less and less useful, but especially in those early game situations, it is absolutely worth it to take that little bit of extra time to try and aim for the head. The next tip that I have for you guys in gunfights is use movement to your advantage. There's some great movement mechanics in this game. You can get around quite quickly, you can climb a lot of things, and take advantage of this. Most of the players I run into in this game, they try to just hold a position and shoot back, and they keep peeking from the exact same spots. They're extremely predictable, and I've noticed a lot of times all you have to do is run a little bit of a circle and get on their flank. They'll have no idea what hit them, and it leads to so many free kills, and you can often wipe whole squads by doing this because it takes them so long to realize what's happening to them. I would say the majority of my kills in this game have been from shooting people in the back. It is so ridiculously easy to do, and yet not very many people are taking advantage of this in the game's current state. Another thing I've noticed that people aren't taking advantage of, myself included, I'm trying to get better with this, is don't be afraid to use your abilities. They actually recharge pretty quickly for the most part, and this means your regular ability as well as your ultimate ability. Don't be afraid to use them, especially within gunfights and stuff. They will often save your life or allow you to get some nice easy kills that would otherwise be a lot more difficult. Now, the next tip I have for you guys in gunfights, and this is something that's a little bit different than some other Battle Royale games, and this has to do with downed enemies, is generally in this game, it's not worth it to finish off enemies that are downed. It is much more effective, in my opinion, in most situations to use that player as bait. This is a little bit different than like Blackout, for instance. In Blackout, you can finish off a guy that's down really, really easily, and once he's finished off, there is no way he's ever coming back. Whereas in this game, it takes a lot longer for a player to bleed out, and they have a lot more health when they're downed. In addition to that, they also often have those knockdown shields. And therefore, it's going to waste a lot more of your ammo and your time and your attention to finish somebody off, when those resources could be better spent trying to use that player as bait and finish off the rest of their team. Now, of course, there are exceptions to this. Sometimes if I down a player and his teammates are nowhere nearby, I'll just finish him off so that I can move on, knowing that he's not going to get revived later on. Or if there's a situation where you're really low on ammo or loot and you need one particular type of loot and you just don't have it, but you have a downed enemy nearby, yeah, sometimes it's best to kill him so you can loot him real quick and fill up your resources. Or maybe there's some situations where it's just a straight up revenge thing. Like if the enemies finish off one of my players that was down, then sure, I'll do it to one of their players if I have that opportunity. But for the most part, I would much rather use them as bait in this game than waste my time and my resources trying to finish them off. This leads us to the next tip, which is kind of the inverse of that. If you have teammates that are down, don't just sprint immediately for the revive. I've seen a lot of players do this, and there's such easy kills when they do this. Just like I was saying with the last tip, when you're down, you have a lot more health, you're a lot harder to kill, and also your bleed out timer is very, very long. So you've got a long time to revive those teammates, and even if you aren't able to revive them, you still can resurrect them by collecting their banner. Now, that's not an ideal situation. Preferably, you do want to revive them so they maintain all of your gear, because sometimes when you resurrect them, they don't have time to go back for it. But don't fall into that trap of running to try and revive a teammate. You've got plenty of time. Stay relaxed, stay in the fight, and try to finish off the enemy team before going for the revive. Now, again, there are exceptions to this, especially if your teammate was picked off from like a really long ways away and it's going to take the enemies a long time to get to you. Then, of course, get that quick revive off before the enemies get to you, and then they can be back in the fight and ready to go. But assuming the fight is still going on around you, don't even think about reviving anyone until it's safe. Next up, a little detail that you might not have picked up on. I'm sure a lot of people have by now, but some people probably haven't picked up on this yet. You can tell the armor type that the enemy is using as you shoot them because it will actually pop up with that color. So if you shoot somebody and you see a purple hit marker, this means they have a purple armor equipped, and it's going to take you more shots to kill them than if you saw somebody with just a white armor or a blue armor equipped. In addition to that, you can see the exact moment you break the enemy's armor when you see the colored line appear under your hit marker. So if we look at a situation right here, and I'll slow it down, the moment you see this line appear, that means you have completely depleted their armor and they now have 100 health or less. So if you see that happen, usually you want to be pushing that enemy because they're going to be frantically trying to heal their shields up, and you'll often be able to finish them off before they're able to do that. Next up, another cool tip with the body armor in this game is when you kill somebody that has that body armor, and you can see the armor type they had, like I said, by shooting them and seeing the color, when you go to loot them and you pick their armor up, it will be fully healed. Even if you fully depleted that armor before you kill them, which I believe you have to do in this game unless you're hitting headshots, the armor doesn't disappear from their loot and it will be full health. So a little time-saving tip, if you kill somebody that had the same armor type that you had, so let's just say you have a blue armor, they had a blue armor when you killed them, and your armor took some damage in that fight, instead of wasting your shield cells trying to repair your armor, just go and loot their armor off of them and you'll have a full health blue shield ready to go. I know this one is a very minor tip, but it will help you save a lot of those shield cells down the road, which are often required for late game situations. Speaking of the shield cell, this brings us to the next tip that I have, especially for mid to late game situations. The item that you should have ready to go in your healing slot is the shield cell. This is the smaller shield cell, not the shield battery that repairs all of your shield. Just that shield cell, which replaces 1 bar of your shield, or effectively 25 health. This is the item you want active most of the time, assuming, of course, you do have a body armor on you. Now, the reason for this is it's simply the most efficient way of getting 25 health. If you're using a syringe or a medkit, first off, you can't really use them until your shields are fully depleted, so you're already going to be in a really tough situation. And second, the shield cell only takes 3 seconds to activate to give you 25 health, whereas something like a syringe, it also gives you 25 health, but it takes 5 seconds to activate that. So the shield cell is great in gunfights because if you take damage, you can just quickly take cover. It takes you just 3 seconds to get 25 shield back, and then you're back in the fight ready to go. So taking the time between fights to make sure that that shield cell is in your hotbar ready to go will often make a big difference once you get yourself into a stressful situation where you need a quick heal. Moving on to the next tip, this is make sure you're utilizing the ping system in the game. This is one of my favorite features that this game has over other Battle Royale games. You can really effectively communicate with your teammates without saying a single word to them by using this ping system. And the really nice thing about this is it's extremely easy to use, you just have to remember to take advantage of it. Even if you're just using the basics like pointing out where you want to go by hitting R1 aiming in the direction you want to go, or by tagging a piece of loot by looking at that loot and hitting R1. I'm talking about console at least. You'll have to work that out if you're on PC. Taking literally half a second to tag something can really make a difference in your communication with your teammates. Now, having said that, the most important ping tool to be using is the ping tool to tag where you see enemy players. On console, at least, all you have to do is be aiming where you see that enemy and then double tap the ping button. It's really simple. Anyone can do this without any problem. It takes no time at all. And this is an absolute game changer. I've found when I get teammates that are constantly using that ping tool anytime they see an enemy, it helps with the entire team's awareness of what's going on around us, and it helps us make much more informed decisions. Even in the middle of a gunfight where my teammates already knew where the enemies were, if I see an enemy trying to go for a flank, I will keep them updated with that ping tool. Even as I'm trying to shoot at that enemy, I'll just take that quick half a second to update his location for my teammates so that they realize that somebody's trying to flank us. If you take nothing else from this video, I hope you at least get this tip in your head. Using that ping tool is one of the most effective things you can do to help your team out in this game. As for the next tip, this is about navigating the map a little bit faster. The first part of this is if you happen to be traveling downhill, slide. You can slide basically infinitely as long as you can maintain that momentum down a hill, and you slide a lot faster than you're able to run. So don't just sprint down hills, slide down hills if you're trying to get down there effectively. Also, another tip that I have to help you get around the map faster that you may not know about is around the map you will see several balloons floating up in the air, and there's a zip line going up to them. These are used for traveling around the map quickly. All you have to do is get to the base of that balloon, zip line up, and then it will launch you, and you'll have your rocket gliding thing as if you were first dropping into the match. This can propel you across the map very, very effectively. But keep in mind, when you do this, you are quite visible, and you will likely be revealing your position by doing that. I should also point out, even though this tip is directly in the training mode for this game, if you hold triangle, you will put your weapons away, bring your fists out, and you'll be able to sprint a little bit faster. Speaking of the training mode, I feel most people that go through that training mode, they just kind of blast through it so they can get the basics down and get into the game. What a lot of people haven't noticed is every single one of the guns that's in the game is available within that training mode. So I would recommend going back into that training mode and familiarizing yourself with all of the guns in the game so you know how they all react, how they all behave, and you can even see exactly how much damage they deal by shooting the targets that are there in the training area. So you can see generally how powerful they are and what their strengths and weaknesses are before getting into the match. Now, at first, I didn't do this at all, so I had no idea what would happen when I picked a gun up. I didn't know how it would react or how it would behave in an actual gunfight until I was in a gunfight, and this often caused me to lose a lot of gunfights early on. Now, when it comes to choosing the actual guns that you're using throughout a match, of course, you don't always have a choice because the loot is randomized. But if you start to get choices as you find new guns on the ground or as you kill enemies and have the opportunity to loot them, I would highly encourage you guys to choose complementary weapons. So since you can carry two guns at once, try to have one gun that's designated for your mid to long range encounters and one gun that's more so for your close range encounters. Just for some examples and also letting you know some of my favorite guns that I've found so far, for mid to long range, I really like using the Spitfire or the Wingman. Also the Hemlock I really enjoy for those mid to long range encounters, whereas close range, I really like the Alternator SMG. I also really like the Peacekeeper Shotgun. That thing is an absolute beast up close and for finishing kills. And therefore, if I get the opportunity, I like to keep one of those long-range guns and then one of those close-range guns handy. It can also often help to have two guns with different ammo types so you can diversify a little bit. And therefore, if you're really struggling to find one particular type of ammo, at least you have that other gun and hopefully you'll be able to find ammo for that one. As for attachments, you will find these all around the world as well as when you're looting enemy bodies. My recommendation is pick up any attachment that you can automatically attach to your gun. So as you're going to loot, it will show you that you can auto attach it to the gun or you can just generally pick it up. Usually I don't pick up attachments just to store in my inventory unless it's early game and I don't know what sort of gun setup I'm going to be going for. But the number one attachment that I'm always keeping an eye out for in this game is extended mags. Extended mags is very, very important with a lot of the guns because, like I said earlier, it can take quite a few shots to kill an enemy, especially if they have armor. And therefore, I find in a lot of my fights, I end up firing an entire magazine without getting the kill, and then I either have to reload or switch weapons. I think this is one of the reasons I like the Spitfire more than anything right now, because the Spitfire has a really good magazine capacity even without extended mags, and I can actually finish off a kill without needing to stop to reload. Now, one tip that doesn't really relate to any of the other tips I've shown so far, this is to do with the heads-up display. On the top right of the screen, it will show you how many squads and how many players are left. However, when you start to get towards the end of a match, there will be a question mark next to how many players are left. Now, initially, I thought this was just when you got down to the last 3 squads or the last 4 squads, it would automatically have a question mark there. However, I did find out, and I wanted to let you guys know, that that appears when there's less than 10 people in the match. And this can be useful information, because if you see that there's still like 6 or 7 squads left, and yet there's a question mark next to the number of people still alive, that means there's going to be a bunch of fragmented squads out there where it might just be 1 person left in that squad or 2 people left in that squad. And this can definitely affect your decision making from that point on. And with that, that just leaves us with one tip that I wanted to give you guys, and I wanted to leave it off on a really strong tip. And this is, if you're trying to improve at the game, which I hope you would be, take fights as often as you comfortably can. If you hear gunshots and you have full health and you have a gun in your hands, go towards that fight. Now, I'm not saying just throw yourself into the fight and run in there like a chicken with your head cut off. Approach the situation, see what's going on, analyze it, and then make an attack plan from there. But don't be afraid to take fights in this game. Don't be the team just sitting in a building waiting for everybody else to die out, trying to survive for as long as possible. This game is all about winning your fights because you get much more powerful as the game goes on, assuming you're taking fights. And that's one thing I love about this game. The more fights you take, the more good loot you're going to end up getting throughout a match, and the more powerful you're going to be towards the end of the match. The team that's camping in the building the entire game has a very small chance of winning compared to the team that's been wiping squads all game and collecting the best loot possible. In addition to getting this good loot, it simply makes you a better player. The more situations you put yourself in, the more practice you're getting, and the more lessons you'll learn as time goes on. Even if you're not necessarily winning all those fights, it allows you to learn a lesson every single time you fail. And with that, we're going to wrap up today's video on the top 20 beginner tips that I have for Apex Legends. I'd like to know in the comment section below, first off, what are you guys thinking about Apex Legends so far? And second, do you have any other tips that you would add to this list? If you enjoyed the video, a like rating is always appreciated, and don't forget to subscribe for more if you haven't already. I'll talk to you guys next time.